Welcome, everybody, to this month's session of Elevated, the project management podcast, where we talk about all things under the sun in regards to project management, be it finance, accounting, AI, data, agile, scrum methodologies. We have various business leaders and academic stars that we bring in. I'm very excited today to introduce our speaker. But before we introduce the speaker, I see a lot of new signups out there. But more importantly, I see a lot of returning people to Elevated. And I wanted to give a big shout out to those who continue to come in and month out. One simple ask. Let us know what you want on this podcast. Let us know what you desire to hear, the types of people, the types of challenges that you hear in industry, and we can incorporate that into the podcast. So I'll go ahead when Hsing-Hsing takes over. We'll put my email in there so you can reach our team and kind of give any feedback that you can, and we can bring those folks in. But I'm very excited also today to announce the release of our Innovation Lab for Artificial Intelligence. The Innovation Lab, we've been cooking it for a while. What it is it allows companies to come to campus for 1 week and both marry in the technical education piece and the strategic kind of MBA type piece to essentially create a roadmap for your artificial intelligence capabilities. These can be talking about challenges from data engineering to breaking down silos within the different teams to creating cross-functional communication. I'm going to go ahead real quick on my screen and share what that looks like on our website. And so if you go to our Caltech CTME website, you'll see an innovation lab for artificial intelligence. And again, this is 1 week on campus. We bring various leading professors for AI. We bring various industry experts. We visit some of the labs that we have on campus that are doing some foundational, groundbreaking work. But more importantly, we help roadmap a solution out for you so you can go out into the wild and have the best expertise possible for your team to practice that and get that necessarily help that you need to move your business forward. So I will just put that in the links as well. But more importantly, let's introduce Hsing-Hsing Li. So Hsing-Hsing and I have known each other from a conference that we met in the later part of 2024. I was very impressed by her expertise and level of technicality at the same time. She's a trained engineer by trade, spent a career coding and managing data. Over the years, she's advised various firms from Fortune 500, G2000 companies that really drive this digital products and roadmap execution around the world. Now she's helping businesses manage this competitive landscape by bringing various artificial intelligence innovators, different types of data innovations from one technology to another. More so, she is an adjunct professor of practice at Columbia University for Technology Management, and her team has won numerous awards for new tech innovation and sustainability. So I'm pleased to introduce Hsing-Hsing Li, and she's going to talk to us about how we break down those various barriers and manage with our portfolio mentality.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick. I'm looking forward to this conversation and the type of questions that we're going to get from the audience. I'm here to share a little bit of a few frameworks to help you develop a strategy that is executable. Give me a second while I pull up the slides. And let's see. Okay, here. Can you guys see that? Okay. So I am here to talk a little bit about the ABBY framework. It is 4 areas that are connected to help you drive everything from strategy down to execution. And I've worked with companies whose strategies have failed multiple times before they are able to become realistic and really get down to business. And with technology, what often happens is that we look for the next shiny object. So there's a little bit of both discipline and a ability to work with business to drive value and ROI that's needed in project management. So I'm going to go and share a little bit of background myself. Nick already did so, but I'm currently a COO of Accelerate AI. I'm an adjunct professor, as mentioned, and I'm also a former deputy CDIO. Nick mentioned a lot of methodologies from Agile to product to some of these things. And I think the ability to connect across those things is what helps project managers and portfolio managers be able to drive those outcomes that we were talking about. Going into the Abby framework, I'm going to go into, let's see, hopefully this works. Okay, we're going to talk about A for aspire. So aspire for what? And this is the aspect of bringing your teams together, both cross-disciplinary and at various levels of the organization to drive the vision and mission. This is to aspire together for you to identify a sweet spot for your emerging tech. You're looking for areas of attractiveness and likelihood. This is pretty straightforward framework to look for areas that you can agree upon across lines of business, and they should be aligned so that you're able to serve multiple businesses using one type of technology. So that lends to the conversation of whether horizontal in nature is better or more narrow and vertical. But I think some of these initiatives for more complex organizations tend to be more horizontal to start for you to be able to adapt and make more narrow and specific over time. And as we were talking about AI and some of the emerging tech that's out there, things like a three-way prioritization is actually more relevant. So for emerging tech, things like evaluating the return or the ROI, lowering the risk, and so you're able to have better governance. And then finally, having reliability in the technology is going to be more important for newer types of technology, such as AI. And then once you have that framework in place and you're in alignment with your business leaders, we go into B for balance. And here we're going to talk a little bit about going from running the business, keeping the lights on, into growing and transforming the business. And for this, that there are two separate areas that we need to keep in mind. One being how we think about running and transforming the business side of things. So we have the current ongoing BAU, the business as usual of our existing commitments to customers and clients, existing operations, and then also the considerations for new opportunities and the strategic outlook. And on the business, on the technology side, I'm sorry, we are often left with both maintaining the existing tech stack and looking for opportunities to enhance and identify new capabilities. And how this works together is for us to look for projects and opportunities that connect both sides. We want to be able to add value in new areas while not disrupting the stability of the foundational operations. And so this adds to the additional quality of the tech that is selected. We want to be able to improve operational overhead, lower any costs so that those savings could be brought back to the core operations. And then same thing for technology. We want to be able to transform both in terms of new and also identifying opportunities to reduce tech debt. And this is the virtuous cycle that is most optimal. All right. Now we go into innovate. This is a pretty simple framework in terms of how we would want to continuously drive transformation. I think a lot of folks do the agile and learn. That means frequent and small projects. What results from that is often a graveyard of apps that don't end up having measurable value. And so I would recommend a approach that includes both frequent and small, as well as big and sustainable. You want to have both technologies that you are learning from, but also committing to big bets that are more long-term and have potentially reusable technology components. Let's see. And last but not least, we're going to talk very quickly about execute. For execute, the framework I have here is really to keep it simple so that adoption would be easy and the teams can adjust as needed over time. We want to be able to measure for value and effort. We want to be flexible and adaptive over time. We want to be able to execute on these areas of breaking down to stories, being able to quantify, and to consistently orchestrate across your roadmap. That roadmap, it gets outdated very quickly, but the rigor in managing it over time is going to show results. So that's the high-level framework that I have, and hopefully that is also helpful for you to understand some of the aspects of project management and portfolio management. That would be helpful to enabling everything from that initial identification of strategy down to the detailed execution. All right. So that's a little bit just a background, and I'd like to see if we have any questions.
Yeah, as Stacy's gathering questions, I've got a couple of my own. So you spoke about reducing technical debt, and I remember when leading
Mm,
ML teams, we
mm,
could constantly would talk to organizations that had accumulated this technical debt. And I remember, I think Google was one of the first ones to talk about the technical debt that's accumulated and kind of led to ML ops type methodology. But can you give some examples from your experience of areas that companies sweep that technical debt under kind of that proverbial rug? I just realized I was on mute the whole time. Hsing-Hsing, did you get any of what I just said?
I got up to proverbial rug.
Proverbial, okay, excellent.
All right.
What I mean is, what are some examples of that technical debt that you've seen?
Yeah, there are big legacy systems at most large companies, and we, as engineers, we're excited about building. We like to build new, and oftentimes there is all this prioritization, and so things get forgotten, and it becomes a spaghetti ball of a little bit harder to refactor, to dissect um, uh, a this older set of products and services. And so I have seen, to your point, that it takes a concerted effort and pre-planning of here are the areas we're going to make reusable so that there is less technical debt that is one time and almost a sunk cost. And for us to be able to plan ahead and be able to um, reuse a particular feature set or a pipeline or a component or a data set, right? Those are all areas that we think of in almost, I call it product architecture, for that to be laid out in advance and to be a set of puzzle pieces that you can reuse over and over.
Yeah. Something that we talk a lot about in the innovation lab is, and the white paper that's forthcoming on that is how you tear down technical silos, especially with teams that might have their own culture engaged, they've ingrained, they might have a certain way of doing things. How do you get alignment across teams and break down those silos?
Yeah, I think there are all these diverse priorities and resource constraints. So um, I think politics is a dirty word, but really it's everyone looking to drive the best outcome, usually for a common strategy and vision. Um, but in kind of aligning on that, it is sometimes using the frameworks that we had taken a look at to agree on what is going to benefit the most people and provide the most value to the most people.
And
So yeah,
and who does that? So you went through the whole portfolio management methodology. It acts across teams. Is it one central person who's implementing that, or is it leaders across teams that just have to kind of come together and have that kumbaya moment of agreement?
yeah, and this goes back to, we talk about technology components and enterprise technology architecture, but this is a little bit the business architecture side. Some companies do not have in their business capabilities the ability to manage these priorities. And so, in developing a new operating model for these organizations, you have to slot in a portfolio project management set of capabilities and resources allocated towards that, so you can continue to run and mitigate these types of challenges. And when you're doing that, obviously, we talked about diverse teams in the decision making. Want to be able to bring in all of these viewpoints so that you get the best results, and of course, being able to measure the value across all the teams. More and more teams are able to do this in data-driven ways, where as we are developing tool sets, we also have the reporting capabilities to identify what are areas to tweak for driving continuous improvement.
Something we hear from a lot of the companies that come to campus and the companies that we work with on site is there's kind of a directive given from a CEO or CIO. They go to a conference, they hear about this new really cool, we'll call it a fizz buzz product, and it does AI and it does all the things. And then there's a direction to like, okay, we need to implement this ourselves. We're going to fall behind. How do you support an organization's broader innovation strategy when you have these kind of like one-time initiatives that are driven by the market? Like, hey, we need to implement AI or else we'll get left behind.
AI is maybe using the framework we just looked at. Um, ROI and risks are important for us to identify. But again, this is just looking at a technology capability. The challenge with a lot of generative AI right now is being able to identify the business value, right? So testing whether it sticks in this function or that function to help with this task or that task, or maybe this workflow. I think the consensus has been it's delivering minimal or maybe less than expected value and results. So it's also about identifying where are the challenges and pain points, and what areas the AI has maturity and is good at doing. So we know call centers, we know summarizing. Those are actions, almost like verbs. If you were to select verbs for what the AI can do, those are things that we know it is particularly good at, and those are things that you would want to put in the first horizon, for example, if we want to use the horizon framework. And those are things that maybe you are able to commit more long term while you experiment in other parts of the business.
Yeah, that reminds me of so the person who won the Nobel Prize this year in economics, Professor Darren Asamoglu, he talks specifically about that. You have these easy AI tasks, which is like chatbot, code generation, text to SQL, and then you have the hard task, which is okay. Maybe you are a hospital and you have a 40-year-old enterprise legacy system. Like, how are you going to get it to be able to work in there? Um, how do you drive these like pockets of innovation while keeping the lights on with the normal day-to-day like data technological infrastructure?
Yeah.
How do you not lose
Uh,
sight of like the main point of the business, which is like bringing in revenue?
yeah. And so for a lot of innovation, that shiny object syndrome means there isn't the sustained focus. So there should be, in an ideal world, as you are trying to structure this for the long term and in a strategic way, a almost like a set aside allocation for let's continue to experiment about this much. It could be, t-shirt sized or an approximate amount, but we experiment this much every year. And we are committed to these larger projects on approximately this scale every year. So that, again, that focus isn't lost and you continue to innovate. Because in the larger strategy, if your sales team says our new strategy is to expand to Canada, that more or less gets done. But to innovate, because there isn't a very specific set of objectives, it often gets forgotten. So you need to keep at it. What are new areas that we can apply this to? What are some of these bigger bets that we will keep sustaining and now move from one it could be region, as we have mentioned, from the US to Canada, or from one business line to another business line.
One comment that I really liked that you said in your presentation was these frequent and small projects kind of lead to this graveyard of applications that have no measurable value. And I remember there was always on the data science teams, like as data scientists, we always had to push back against the business seeing us as, oh, they just do science experiments. Like, I don't want to experiment, I want to implement. How do you balance exploration and experimenting and trying new things on the technology front that might not have immediate measurable value with, like you said, keeping the lights on?
Yeah. It's that commitment, right? Because it is new. Someone has to go first, someone has to fail. And we often say in innovation and a lot of the new methodologies that we want to fail fast and have a culture of being able to fail safely. But in larger companies, that's often still not the case. In terms of culture, in terms of the stigma that is associated with failed projects. And so we want to give a safe space for teams to experiment and a commitment to bring the learnings from those experiments into the larger legacy applications as well as growth and transformative applications.
So I'll reiterate what Stacy said in the comments. If you have questions, please type them in. This is kind of a free-for-all session. I still have a bunch of questions. I can keep the lights on, as Hsing-Hsing was saying, if need be. But I'd love to hear kind of some audience questions too. All right, another question. So if you're an organization and you continually to hear from other organizations about all the cool latest AI stuff they're doing. And it seems that it's like that, what they say, like keeping up with the Johnsons next door or the Joneses. And how, as an organization, do you keep your eye on the ball of, keeping the lights on, performing what your organization is there to do with that side of experimentation and that pressure you're getting from the market to not be left behind? Have you seen that in companies where you go in and they say, hey, we need the latest and greatest, and you go, okay, what's the ROI? What does your current processes look like? Can you walk us through, without saying the name of a company, maybe a use case you've come into?
Yeah. The reality of it is, Nick, that sometimes the ROI is in marketing and in being able to talk about the experimentation and the forward-thinking strategy that that comes from the CEO and is implemented and delivered by the team. So innovations that show how cutting edge your team is able to be, that your data is ready for the next challenges that come into play, are sometimes just as important, even if you're not able to measure specific productivity gains, but maybe in terms of the as I mentioned, more marketing and communications type of gain.
Okay. All right, we got questions rolling in, so we're going to do this live. So Samuel, thanks for the questions. First question from Samuel: can you give us tips on how to prioritize AI projects over other projects that are needed to keep the lights on? I think this is in the same vein. We're just going to keep this party rolling with keeping the lights on.
Well, yeah, I think being able to connect a project. So maybe something that's easy for us to understand would be a project that enhances, let's just say, user experience, while also upgrading the platform, right? Like you can have a project that is structured to do both, and hopefully uh, keeping in mind that as much as you are able to uh, make the workflow less disruptive and maintain the existing business processes, the more stability to both the on the technical side as well as the business side you'll be. So maybe clarifying that a little bit, if you're able to structure a set of AI experiments that could also be integrated into several systems, several data sets, then that gives you the way one way to see if that will start to deliver the value.
Yeah. Samuel, as a follow-up, I'll paraphrase. There's this kind of sarcastic stigma of saying that AI is going to solve all our problems, and you have a vendor, and that's what they're
Mm,
pitching. Uh,
yeah.
how would you approach that?
How, well, in terms of approaching first the vendor and understanding what they're delivering, um, and then I think there's the part of how do we approach this from an internal perspective. Um, the A lot of what vendors will share includes data that's already set up a particular way, and also workflow, right? I think a lot of the conversation around agentic AI is a little bit more around how the um, the systems are connected to be able to serve the the outcomes. So a lot of products are embedding AI capabilities within their tool set, and so that workflow is already going to be empowered by how they've set up their architecture and the data that's already embedded in, let's just say, an ERP or a CRM. But when we're talking about vendors who will develop a custom solution for us, they are using the premise that, okay, everything's already um, integrated, that it is ready to go. Um, I think vendors who understand that you may have a lot of additional customization of the data, that that it is ready to work with any level of maturity in terms of your processes and your data stack. Those are the vendors who are going to be able to be more horizontal, as we mentioned, right? If it is already, set up in a very narrow and vertical manner, then you can only tweak so much, um, and come back to um, your set of specific business needs. Where if it is a little bit more horizontal, that it is applicable to many types of processes and business capabilities, then they can embed that down into the upstream systems that you might have, the data sources that you may have, and also the outputs that you might need. So, everything from if you need it to go back to those legacy stacks, or just deliver it directly to your users, maybe in a new UX, right?
Yeah. Another question from participant. Let's turn this on its head. So instead of the organizational leader trying to sell us on AI and the capabilities, How about if you are running a team and you need to sell leadership on an AI capability, and there's a stigma that, oh, AI is just going to solve all our problems from leadership. We don't really want to dive into that.
Mhm. Uh, I think most of the AI folks that I've been speaking to, some of the big name LLMs out there, also think that their customers think they are a magic wand, right? They get this constant feedback that come in and just transform our organization. The uh, the actuality is that it's still that consultative process. It's understanding where you are and meeting you where you
Yeah.
are. So um, whether your data is ready, we mentioned several times already, whether your workforce is also adapted to understand how to leverage the tools and also when it's appropriate to use the tools.
Yeah.
Those are all things that it's not a magic wand, but it is much more like a traditional um, digital transformation in that way.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Hsing-Hsing, I think we got all the questions from the participants.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for your talk. Thank you for walking us through the portfolio methodology for transformation around technology. One parting comment I want to say is we have an offering that's free for the audience called AI Tools for Everyone. And what we hear time and time again from leaders within different companies is, I don't have my hands on the keyboard. I don't have that role. I've moved up from that role. But I still want to be able to leverage AI tools. What's the best way to do that? So what we did is we gathered some of our best instructors and we created 4 2-hour sessions. Each of these sessions allows us to dive into 2 different AI tools, from ChatGPT to Perplexity to Lutra AI to even some of the programming tools like Cursor and Bolt.new. So that course is going to begin on March 4th. It's going to be Tuesday nights, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock Pacific time. It will also be recorded, so you don't have to attend it live, and it's absolutely free. That will be going up next week. We'll send out a link to the participants on how to register. But again, thank you so much, Hsing-Hsing. Thank you everybody for being devout followers of Elevated here at Caltech Center for Technology and Management Education, and we hope to see you next month.